Melissa was a 15-year-old girl, intelligent, proud, but burdened by the weight of life far too soon. Her father had fought a long and grueling battle with a terminal illness, but in the end, he lost. The day they buried him, something inside Melissa also died. Her father always told her, "You're brilliant. One day you'll change the world." But now, all she had left was the struggle to survive. After her father's passing, hard times followed. Her mother did everything she could to make ends meet, working tirelessly to pay the bills, but it wasn't enough. Eventually, their landlord came knocking. With a cold, indifferent tone, he said, "If you can't pay, you have to leave." Melissa clenched her fists in silent fury, but there was nothing they could do. Helpless and with nowhere to go, they packed what little they had and stepped into the unforgiving streets. At night, they took shelter under a deserted bridge, using flattened cardboard boxes as makeshift blankets. The cold bit through their thin clothes, but Melissa refused to beg. She had made a promise to her mother, "No matter what happens, we won't lose our dignity." But hunger knew no pride. For the first few days, Melissa's mother managed to scrape together some money from odd jobs, just enough to keep them going. But work became scarce, the winter air grew harsher, and soon, food became impossible to find. 2 whole days passed without a single meal. Melissa could feel the emptiness clawing at her insides, but the worst part was watching her mother weaken with each passing hour. Her once strong and resilient mother could barely stand. Her hands trembled, her breath shallow. Melissa couldn't take it anymore. She could endure her own hunger, but watching her mother slowly fade was unbearable. That night, swallowing her pride, she walked toward a row of garbage bins, her hands trembling as she reached inside. Tears welled up in her eyes. "If Dad were here, we would never have ended up like this," she thought bitterly. Then a voice broke the silence. "Kid, seeing you like this breaks my heart." Melissa spun around. Standing there was a man, his hair slightly disheveled, his eyes filled with warmth. He was dressed simply yet stylishly. There was something about him that felt safe, reassuring. "I'm John Bon Jovi," the man said softly. "Can you tell me your story?" Melissa kept her eyes on the ground. She didn't want to talk. She was tired of people looking at her with pity, of empty words and fake concern. But there was something different about this man. There was no judgment in his eyes, only pure empathy and understanding. Something inside her cracked, and the emotions she had buried for so long threatened to spill over. She took a shaky breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "My father died," she said, her voice trembling. "He was really sick, but we didn't have the money to get him proper treatment. I watched him slip away right in front of me. And after that, my mom and I lost everything. We lost our home. We ran out of money. People who used to smile at us don't even see us anymore. Now we live on the streets. My mom is trying to work, but it's never enough. And now we can't even fight the hunger anymore." Bon Jovi's expression darkened with sorrow. He had struggled in his youth, had known hunger, had fought to survive. But this was different. Melissa's voice cracked, but it carried the weight of a scream buried deep inside her. "We haven't eaten in 2 days. My mom is so weak, she can barely stand. She always made sure I had something. But now, she has nothing left to give. Today, for the first time, I saw her collapse. That's why I'm here. I started looking through the trash, hoping I'd find something to eat. But I don't want to be here. I don't want to live like this. No one is going to help us. I know that. No one cares about a hungry girl and her sick mother. To people, we're just shadows on the street." Her voice broke as a sob escaped her throat. Tears streamed down her face, but she quickly wiped them away. She was not weak. She was not a beggar. Lifting her head, she met Bon Jovi's gaze directly. "I am not someone to be pitied, but if my mother dies, I die too. That's why I'm here." Bon Jovi's eyes filled with tears. He thought back to his younger years, back when life had punched him hard in the face, when he had wished for someone to reach out and help him. But nothing he had endured compared to the pain this young girl was carrying. This girl was carrying the weight of the world. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed something. Clutched tightly in Melissa's hands was an old worn-out mathematics textbook. Its cover was peeling. The pages yellowed and frayed, but it was well cared for, as if it were her most prized possession. "What are you doing with that book?" he asked gently. Melissa flinched slightly. She hadn't expected him to notice. Her fingers tightened around the book's edges, as if to protect it. I study," she admitted hesitantly. "I want to go to college one day. I'm good at math, but I don't think it matters anymore, because if things stay like this, that day will never come." Bon Jovi remained silent for a moment. Then he smiled softly, though his eyes still glistened with emotion. "A mind like yours doesn't belong on the streets," he thought. But aloud, he said something else. "If you're really that talented, then you're a genius. And geniuses don't belong in the trash." Melissa looked at him, stunned. Was he serious? No one had ever looked at her as anything other than a lost cause, another unfortunate soul. But for the first time, someone was seeing her as a person with a future. Not just a starving girl, not just a statistic, not just someone to feel sorry for. Bon Jovi took a deep breath. "I'm going to do something for you," he said firmly. "But first, let's get you something to eat." Melissa hesitated, but something inside her shifted. Maybe for the first time in a long while, she felt safe. Slowly, she nodded and took a step forward, walking beside him. John Bon Jovi led Melissa and her mother to his charity restaurant, a place where those in need could eat without worrying about money. He explained that the meals were free for those who couldn't afford them. But Melissa hesitated. Her pride made it difficult to accept help, even when she desperately needed it. However, when her mother, with tears in her eyes, whispered a trembling, "Thank you," Melissa lowered her gaze and nodded silently. At that moment, she realized it wasn't just about her. Her mother needed this, and she couldn't let her pride stand in the way. As they ate, Bon Jovi watched Melissa closely. There was something about her, something more than just resilience. She had an extraordinary mind, and he couldn't let that go to waste. "You're incredibly smart," he said, breaking the silence. "So I'm going to make you an offer. I can't let your talent be wasted." A few days later, Melissa's life changed forever. Bon Jovi didn't just provide them with food, he found them a place to live. But his greatest act of generosity was yet to come. He arranged for a scholarship that would cover Melissa's education every year. "I don't just want to give you a meal," he told her. "I want to give you a future." Melissa's eyes welled up with tears. She had never expected anything like this. "I never thought anyone would do something like this for me," she murmured, her voice shaking. Bon Jovi smiled warmly. Sometimes, changing a life is as simple as opening the right door. 2 years later, Melissa had proven herself to be a true prodigy. Now 17, she had taken multiple intelligence tests and achieved outstanding results. Her name was making waves, and she had earned acceptance into one of the country's top universities. Bon Jovi hadn't just given her food or shelter. He had given her a future, a new beginning. Before heading off to college, Melissa wrote him a letter. "You didn't just give me a meal, you gave me a life. One day, I will do the same for others, just like you did for me." Because when someone reached out their hand, my whole world changed. Bon Jovi read the letter and smiled. He knew that he hadn't just helped one girl, he had changed the future. Melissa's story is proof that one act of kindness can change a life forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe, because sometimes a small action can open the biggest doors.